"She's not supposed to be here," my daughter cried, her voice cracking with rage as she pointed at me across the mahogany table. The lawyer cleared his throat and read my name again, Elizabeth Margaret Wilson. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Every pair of eyes burned into me, my daughter Claire's filled with hatred, my son-in-law Rick's with calculated coldness, and my grandchildren's with confusion. I sat motionless, hands folded in my lap, feeling the weight of their disgust pressing against my chest. Just 3 months ago, they had told me I was dead to them. Now here I was, alive and seated at my late husband's will reading, the woman they had tried to erase. "I object to this," Claire hissed through clenched teeth. "She abandoned him. She walked out when he got sick. She has no right to be here." Her words sliced through me like shattered glass, each fragment embedding itself in my heart. The truth was so twisted, so backward that I could barely breathe. "Mrs. Wilson is listed as the primary beneficiary in the most recent will," Mr. Peterson explained, adjusting his glasses. "Filed just 2 weeks before Mr. Wilson's passing." Rick slammed his fist on the table. "That's impossible. James rewrote his will last year. We were there. Elizabeth wasn't mentioned at all." His voice rose with each word, his face reddening beneath his expensive haircut. I kept my eyes fixed on a small water stain on the conference room wall. The pattern looked almost like a map of Virginia, the state where James and I had built our first home together. 46 years of marriage, and it had come down to this. A room full of venom and accusations. "We have records of Mr. Wilson visiting my office alone, Mrs. Wilson accompanying him," the lawyer continued, pulling out a folder with dated security photos. "The changes were properly witnessed, notarized, and filed. I understand this is unexpected, but I assure you, everything is legally binding." Claire's mascara ran in black streaks down her cheeks. "You manipulated him when he was dying," she spat at me. "He was on medication. He wasn't in his right mind." I finally raised my eyes to meet hers. The daughter I had once rocked to sleep during thunderstorms now looked at me like I was a monster. The daughter whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose tears I had dried after her first heartbreak. My beautiful Claire, now a stranger poisoned against me. "Your father was lucid until the end," I said softly, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. "The cancer took his strength, not his mind." "Liar!" she screamed, standing so violently her chair crashed backward. "You weren't even there. You were shacked up in some apartment while we took care of him, while we watched him die." The truth hovered on my lips, desperate to escape. How I wanted to tell them what really happened that night in January, when Rick had changed the locks on our home of 30 years. How James had called me secretly from his hospital bed, begging me to forgive him for believing their lies. How he had discovered what they had been doing behind both our backs. Instead, I simply opened my purse and removed a small voice recorder. "James knew this day would come," I said, placing it on the table. "He left more than just a will." The blood drained from Rick's face. Claire's eyes widened in panic. They knew. In that moment, they knew that their carefully constructed house of cards was about to collapse. "Perhaps," said Mr. Peterson, "we should hear what Mr. Wilson wanted to say." I pressed play, and James's weakened voice filled the room. My beautiful husband, speaking from beyond the grave, about to reveal the truth that our daughter and son-in-law had worked so desperately to hide. The truth about the missing money, about the forged signatures, about why they had turned our daughter against me in my hour of greatest need. "To my beloved wife, Elizabeth," James began, his voice still strong despite his failing body. "I'm so sorry for doubting you. My name is Elizabeth Wilson, though for the past year, I felt like a ghost haunting the edges of my own life. At 68, I never imagined I'd be starting over. Not after spending nearly 5 decades building a life with James in our colonial-style home in Fairfield, Connecticut. The same home where I now stand in the driveway, unwelcome, with a court order in my trembling hands. 2 weeks have passed since the will reading that turned my family upside down. 2 weeks of phone calls from Claire's lawyers, threatening messages from Rick, and silence from my grandchildren, Madison, 15, and Tyler, 12, who I suspect have been told not to contact their manipulative grandmother. My life now fits into the small 1-bedroom apartment in Hartford I've been renting since James first got sick, and things began to unravel. The walls are thin, painted an institutional beige that reminds me of the hospital where I spent so many nights holding James's hand. There's a small balcony where I've placed 3 potted geraniums, survivors, like me, and a bookshelf filled with photo albums I can't bear to open. I work 3 days a week at a local library, shelving books and helping with the children's reading program. The quiet routine and the kindness of strangers have become my lifeline. Mrs. Abernathy, the head librarian with her silver bob and collection of vintage brooches, never asks why a woman my age is starting entry-level work. She just brings me tea in a chipped mug with blue forget-me-nots painted on the side. "You're good with the children," she told me yesterday as I finished reading Where the Wild Things Are to a group of wide-eyed preschoolers. "They respond to you. Perhaps because children haven't yet learned to judge, to suspect, to hate. Perhaps because they still see people as they are, not as others tell them to be." My routine is simple now. I wake before sunrise, make a single cup of coffee, and sit by my window watching the world come alive. I've started journaling again, something I abandoned in the chaos of raising Claire and supporting James's career as an architect. Those days when our lives seemed charmed, when James's firm won awards for his innovative designs, when Claire graduated with honors from Dartmouth, when we hosted summer barbecues in our backyard paradise. The garden was my domain. I could coax life from the most stubborn seeds, create harmony with colors and textures. James used to joke that I had magic in my fingers. The Elizabeth touch, he called it. Now my hands often feel empty, fidgeting with the wedding ring I still can't bring myself to remove. My neighbors are mostly young professionals who nod politely in the hallway, but keep their distance from the quiet older woman with sad eyes. Except for Sophia, the nurse who lives across the hall. She works night shifts at Hartford Hospital, the same hospital where James spent his final months, and sometimes brings me leftover muffins from the staff room. "You remind me of my mother," she told me once, her Filipino accent wrapping warmly around the words. She also had dignity that no one could take away. Dignity. Is that what this is? This silent suffering? This refusal to collapse under the weight of injustice? Some days it feels more like stubbornness, like spite. Like I'm holding myself together with safety pins and sheer will, because giving in would mean they've won. The lawyer, Mr. Peterson, calls me weekly with updates. The voice recording from James has stalled Claire and Rick's legal challenges, but they're persistent. They've hired an expensive law firm from New York. They're claiming undue influence, mental incapacity, anything to invalidate James's final wishes. "It's common in these situations, Mr. Rund," Peterson explained during our last meeting, his bow tie slightly askew as he organized papers across his desk. "When large sums are involved, family disputes can become complicated. Complicated. Such a polite word for betrayal so deep it rewrites your understanding of love. The large sum he refers to is the $3.2 million from James's life insurance, his retirement accounts, and the equity in our home. Money that was meant to support our golden years together. Money that Rick and Claire had apparently been counting on, planning for. I discovered their first attempts to access James's account 6 months before he died. Strange calls from the bank, questions about large transfer requests I hadn't made. When I confronted them, they convinced James I was becoming paranoid, forgetting things. Early dementia, they whispered to him when they thought I couldn't hear. "She needs help, Dad. She's not herself." And James, my James, weak from chemotherapy and frightened by his prognosis, had moments of doubt. Just enough doubt for them to suggest I needed time away to rest. Just enough doubt for Rick to convince him to add their names to accounts for safekeeping. I glance at my watch. In 30 minutes, I'm meeting Mr. Peterson to review the renovation estimates for the house. My house, that I'll be moving back into next month. The courts have granted me temporary possession, while the will dispute continues. Claire and her family have been given 4 weeks to vacate. 4 weeks to remove themselves from the home they tried to steal from under me. Outside my apartment window, rain begins to fall, tapping against the glass like hesitant fingers. I button my cardigan, the blue one James gave me for our last Christmas together, and prepare to step into the storm. It began with a phone call I wasn't meant to overhear. 11 months ago, James had just been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Our world was shattering into pieces, but we were facing it together, or so I thought. I was returning from the pharmacy with James's new medications, juggling paper bags, and my purse as I entered through the garage. Claire and Rick had arrived earlier to help out, though their help mostly consisted of hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. "Dad's not thinking clearly." Claire's voice drifted from the kitchen. "The doctors said the cancer might have spread to his brain. We need to protect the assets before she makes rash decisions." "I've already spoken with Martin about the power of attorney," Rick replied, his corporate lawyer confidence unmistakable. "We can file the paperwork next week," presented as a way to lift the burden from both of them. I froze in the hallway, prescription bags clutched against my chest. The she they were referring to wasn't some abstract third party. It was me, Elizabeth, wife of 46 years, mother, grandmother, suddenly an outsider in my own home. "What about the lake house?" Claire asked. "Mom never wanted it in the first place. She complained about the upkeep every summer." My complaints were never about the lake house itself, but about Rick's expensive renovation demands that James always gave into. The boat dock we couldn't afford. The gourmet kitchen remodel when the original worked perfectly fine. "Already working on transferring that separately," Rick said, lowering his voice. "Connecticut property laws have some advantages if we move quickly." The marble floor beneath my feet seemed to tilt. I reached for the wall to steady myself, sending my car keys clattering to the ground. The kitchen fell silent. "Mom?" Claire called out, her voice instantly transforming from conspiratorial to saccharine. "Is that you?" I considered confronting them immediately, demanding explanations, expressing my hurt, my rage. Instead, I took a deep breath, picked up my keys, and entered the kitchen with a practiced smile. "The pharmacy was busy," I said, placing the medications on the counter. "Did you two eat lunch yet? I can make sandwiches." Their exchanged glance spoke volumes. Relief, perhaps a touch of guilt quickly suppressed. Claire tucked a strand of her chestnut hair behind her ear, the same nervous gesture she'd had since childhood when caught in a lie. "We grabbed something earlier," Rick said, closing his laptop. "How's Dad feeling today?" "Tired," I replied, organizing the pill bottles by schedule. "The new pain medication makes him drowsy." Over the next 2 weeks, their scheme unfolded with frightening efficiency. Forms appeared requiring James's signature, just routine insurance updates. Meetings with financial advisors that I was subtly excluded from. "We don't want to tire you out, Mom. We'll take notes." James was sleeping more, his once sharp mind clouded by medication and pain. On his better days, when clarity returned, he'd reach for my hand and apologize for being a burden. "Never a burden," I would tell him, kissing his forehead where the skin had grown papery thin. "We're in this together," but we weren't. Not really. Not with Claire and Rick working diligently to drive a wedge between us. Small comments at first. "Mom seemed confused about your doctor's instructions again." Then larger insinuations. "We're worried about Mom's memory. Has she been tested?" The isolation happened gradually. Claire suggested a visiting nurse to give me breaks, but the breaks became longer, more frequent. Friends who called were told I was resting and couldn't come to the phone. My sister in Phoenix was told James was too sick for visitors when she wanted to fly in. Then came the night I found the changed will in Rick's briefcase. I hadn't meant to snoop, but I needed our insurance cards, and Claire had said they were in Rick's work bag. Instead, I found a draft document titled Last Will and Testament of James Wilson, dated just 3 weeks earlier. A document I had never seen, naming Claire as executor and primary beneficiary, with special provisions for Rick to manage the business assets. Most devastating was the paragraph that described me as mentally incapacitated and unfit to manage finances. There, in black and white, was the narrative they had carefully constructed. My hands shook so badly I could barely refold the papers and return them to the briefcase. That night, I confronted James while he was lucid, showing him phone records of transfers he'd never authorized, explaining the conversations I'd overheard. His face crumpled in disbelief, then hardened with anger. "Get Claire and Rick," he whispered hoarsely. "Now." The confrontation was brief but volatile. Claire cried, claiming they were only trying to protect us both. Rick became defensive, then threatening. "You're making a scene over nothing," he said, standing over James's hospital bed that we'd set up in the downstairs study. "Elizabeth clearly doesn't understand these financial matters. James, you're not thinking clearly." "Get out of my house," James said, his voice weak but resolute. "Both of you. Now." They left, but only temporarily. The next morning, while I was at the pharmacy again, they returned with 2 men in suits, a doctor I'd never seen, and their attorney. By the time I returned, James had been sedated for his own comfort, and papers had been signed requesting an emergency hearing regarding his competency. 3 days later, I was served with papers questioning my mental capacity and demanding I vacate our home for James's well-being. They had collected statements from concerned friends about my erratic behavior and memory issues. Friends I now realized had only ever been Claire and Rick's friends, not ours. The locks were changed the same day. When I tried to enter using my key, Rick met me at the door. "I'm sorry, Elizabeth," he said without a trace of genuine remorse. "This is what's best for everyone. We've arranged a nice apartment for you. Very comfortable. We'll bring your clothes and personal items later." Behind him, I caught a glimpse of James in his wheelchair, sedated and confused, Claire's hand on his shoulder in a possessive grip. "James!" I called out. "James, don't let them do this." His eyes flickered with recognition, with desperation, but the medication kept him from responding. As Rick closed the door, I saw Claire lean down to whisper something in her father's ear, something that made him close his eyes in defeat. I stood on the doorstep of my own home, locked out of my life, with nothing but my purse and the devastating knowledge that my own daughter had orchestrated my exile. I met James Wilson on a rainy Tuesday in September 1976 at Hartley's Diner in New Haven. I was 20, working my way through nursing school by waiting tables. He was 23, a graduate architecture student with ambitious designs and a smile that lit up his entire face. He sat at the counter every morning, sketching buildings on napkins while nursing a single cup of coffee. "You need more customers like him," my manager would joke. "Uses one napkin, makes it last an hour." What my manager didn't know was that James left those napkin sketches for me, tucked under his coffee cup, with increasingly generous tips. Little architectural wonders with tiny notes in the margins. "Inspired by your smile," or "Structure as beautiful as the server." When he finally asked me out, I made him wait 3 days for an answer. Not out of coyness, but because my mother was dying of breast cancer, and dating seemed frivolous amid grief. But James was persistent. He showed up at the hospital with a detailed sketch of a healing garden. "For when she gets better," he said, though we both knew she wouldn't. He sat with me through those final difficult weeks, bringing sandwiches when I forgot to eat, holding my hand during the funeral. When I had to drop out of nursing school to support my younger brother, James never judged my decision to take a full-time position at the insurance company instead. "You're the strongest person I know," he told me. "Your compassion is your superpower." We married the following spring in a small ceremony at his parents' backyard in Mystic. My white dress was simple, made by my aunt. His suit was borrowed from his father. What we lacked in grandeur, we made up for in dreams. Our first apartment was tiny, a one-bedroom walk-up with pipes that clanged and windows that rattled. But James transformed it with clever storage solutions and furniture he built himself. I planted herbs in window boxes and learned to make soups that could stretch for days. We were happy in our modest kingdom, rich in love if not in dollars. Claire arrived 3 years later, colicky and demanding from her first breath. I'd never seen James so smitten, so completely wrapped around such tiny fingers. He would pace the floor with her for hours, singing off-key Beatles songs while I snatched precious moments of sleep. "She has your determination," he would say, as our daughter screamed through another night, "and your beautiful eyes." When his first major design was accepted by a prestigious firm in Hartford, we celebrated by splurging on a real crib to replace the second-hand bassinet. Success came gradually after that. James's talent finally recognized, project offers increasing. We saved every extra penny for a down payment on a house. The Colonial in Fairfield wasn't perfect when we bought it. The paint was peeling, the garden overgrown, but I could envision what it could become. A home where Claire would grow up with space to run, where we could host Thanksgiving dinners and summer barbecues. "It has good bones," James declared, using his architect's vocabulary, "like our marriage." We restored that house room by room over decades, a labor of love that paralleled the building of our life together. I still remember the weekend we painted the living room, Claire toddling around with a brush, leaving tiny handprints on the baseboards that we never had the heart to paint over. Those early years weren't easy. James traveled for work. I balanced motherhood with part-time jobs. Money was often tight, especially after James started his own firm. There were arguments, compromises, tears, the normal friction of two people growing together. When James's father died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving significant medical debt, we took in his mother without hesitation. For 7 years, she lived in our converted sunroom, her mind gradually claimed by dementia. I became her caretaker, managing her medications, bathing her, helping her eat when her hands grew too unsteady to hold silverware. "You're a saint," our friends would say, but I never saw it that way. Family takes care of family. That's what I believed. What I taught Claire. Claire was 12 when she started pulling away, developing the sharp edges of adolescence. She was embarrassed by her grandmother's condition, resentful of the attention the older woman required. "Why does she have to live with us?" she would demand after her grandmother had a particularly difficult day. "None of my friends have crazy grandmas in their houses." James would try to explain, to instill empathy, but Claire had begun crafting her own narrative, one where her needs should come first. One where sacrifice was something other people did for her, not something she offered. Still, there were golden moments. Claire's high school graduation, where she gave a speech that moved the entire auditorium to tears. Her college acceptance letters, spreading across our kitchen table like promises. The summer nights when the three of us would sit on the porch, eating ice cream and planning adventures we might take someday. When Claire met Rick during her junior year at Dartmouth, James had reservations. "He's very focused on appearances," he noted after their first visit. "Did you see how he checked the labels on our wine?" But Rick was charming, ambitious, and Claire was in love. Who were we to question her choice? When they married at the Waterford Country Club, a venue far beyond what we could comfortably afford, we took out a second mortgage to give her the wedding she wanted. "She's our only child," James reasoned as we signed the paperwork. "She deserves her special day." The grandchildren softened Claire somewhat. Madison's birth brought my daughter back to me temporarily, scared, seeking guidance in those early months of motherhood. "I don't know how you made this look so easy," she admitted one night, exhausted from newborn demands. "I moved in for 6 weeks to help, cooking, cleaning, taking night shifts with the baby so Claire could rest. James renovated their nursery as a gift, building a rocking chair that matched the one he'd made for Claire as a baby. When Tyler arrived 3 years later, we repeated the process. By then, Rick's career in corporate law was flourishing. They bought the large house in Greenwich, joined the country club, began vacationing in places James and I had only seen in magazines. The distance grew again, subtle at first. Invitations became less frequent. Our gifts to the children, handmade and thoughtful but not expensive, were received with tight smiles. Claire began to refer to her childhood as modest, with a tone that suggested deprivation rather than sufficiency. "We want more for our kids," she would say, as if our sacrifices had somehow been a failure. Still, we remained a family. Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, James and I babysitting while they took anniversary trips. We were there when Madison broke her arm falling from a tree, when Tyler struggled with reading and needed daily practice. We showed up. We always showed up. Even after James's diagnosis, my first thought was protecting Claire from the full brutality of what was coming. I remembered how my mother's illness had derailed my own youth. I wanted to shield my daughter, to manage the storm for her. "Let me tell her," I said to James the day we received the news. "I'll find the right words." But the person I was protecting wasn't the daughter I had raised. Somewhere along the way, influenced by Rick's values and their wealthy social circle, Claire had transformed into someone who saw her father's illness not as a family crisis, but as a financial event to be managed. How could I have known that the little girl who once made get-well cards for her grandmother would one day orchestrate her own father's estrangement from me? How could I have predicted that the family we built with such care would fracture along fault lines of greed? Yet here we are, the past I cherish seemingly erased, rewritten, to cast me as an incompetent burden, rather than the backbone I had always been. The emotional bonds I thought unbreakable snapped like dry twigs under the weight of avarice. The lowest moment came 3 weeks after I had been forced from my home. I was living in the sterile apartment Rick had arranged, a temporary situation that felt increasingly permanent. My clothes had been delivered in garbage bags. My jewelry box arrived with the lock broken, several precious pieces missing, including my mother's pearl earrings. I had been trying desperately to see James, making daily calls to our home that went unanswered. I sent emails that bounced back as undeliverable. They had changed his email password. I even wrote physical letters that I suspect never reached his hands. That Tuesday began with a rare glimmer of hope. Dr. Levinson, James's longtime physician and our friend for 20 years, agreed to meet me for coffee. "I'm concerned about his care," he admitted, glancing around the cafe as if worried about being overheard. "They've brought in a new medical team. Specialists from New York who've changed his treatment protocol without consulting his full medical history." My hands trembled around my cup. "Is he asking for me?" Dr. Levinson's pause told me everything. "He's heavily medicated, Elizabeth. More than I would recommend at this stage." When I questioned it, Claire suggested my services were no longer required. "They've isolated him completely," I whispered, the realization washing over me anew. "How can they do this? I'm his wife. They're using his mental state to control access," he explained gently. "The new doctor has documented episodes of agitation that supposedly occur after any mention of you." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "That's a lie." "I believe you," he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Which is why I'm telling you that James is being transferred to Hartford Memorial tomorrow for some tests. Around 2 p.m. The east entrance is usually quiet. I spent that night planning, selecting my most respectable outfit, a blue dress James had always loved, and arranging my hair carefully. I even applied makeup for the first time in weeks. I would be composed, dignified. I would show anyone watching that I was nothing like the unstable woman Claire had described. The hospital corridor was cool and quiet as I waited near the elevators. My heart pounded so violently I feared others might hear it. When the doors finally opened and I saw James being wheeled out, flanked by a nurse and an aide I didn't recognize, I nearly collapsed with relief. "James," I called softly, approaching the wheelchair. "It's me. It's Elizabeth." His eyes, those kind eyes that had looked at me with love for decades, struggled to focus, but recognition dawned, followed by a tremulous smile that transformed his gaunt face. "Beth," he whispered, using his special name for me. "You're here." I knelt beside the wheelchair, taking his thin hand in mine. His skin was cool, papery, but his fingers tightened around mine with surprising strength. "I've been trying to reach you," I said. "Are they taking good care of you?" "They said you left," he murmured, confusion clouding his expression. "That you couldn't handle the sickness." "No," I insisted, fighting back tears. "They took you from me, changed the locks. I would never leave you. Never." A flicker of his old sharpness returned to his eyes. "I thought it didn't sound like you." His voice strengthened. "Things haven't been making sense. The medication. Mr. Wilson needs to get to his appointment," the nurse interrupted, placing herself between us. "You're upsetting him." "I'm his wife," I stated firmly. "I have every right to speak with him." The elevator doors opened again, and Claire emerged, engaged in conversation with a man in a white coat. She froze when she saw me, her expression morphing from shock to cold fury. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, striding toward us. "How did you know about this appointment?" Before I could answer, James spoke. "Claire, stop this. I want to talk to your mother." "Dad, you're confused again," she said, her tone shifting to the condescending sweetness I had come to recognize as her manipulative voice. "Remember what Dr. Griffith said about staying calm? Mom isn't supposed to visit right now. It's not good for your blood pressure." "I know my own mind," James insisted, but his voice had weakened. I could see the medication reasserting its hold. "Security," Claire called to a uniformed man nearby. "This woman is violating a restraining order." "There is no restraining order," I protested, still holding James's hand. "That's a lie. We have the paperwork right here." Rick's voice came from behind me. I hadn't even noticed him arrive. He pulled documents from his leather briefcase, presenting them to the security guard with practiced authority. The guard reviewed them with a frown. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. These are forged," I insisted. But even to my ears, I was beginning to sound like the hysterical woman they had portrayed me to be. "James, tell them. Tell them you want me here." But James's momentary clarity was fading. His eyes had grown unfocused again, his grip on my hand loosening. "Please don't make a scene," Claire said loudly enough for others in the corridor to hear. "This is exactly why the doctors recommended limited contact. Your emotional outbursts aren't helping Dad's recovery." The security guard took my elbow. "Ma'am, please come with me. Let me just say goodbye," I pleaded. "Just 1 minute. She's going to have another episode," Claire stage whispered to the doctor. "This is what happened last time." I leaned toward James, trying to reach him before they separated us again. "I love you," I'll find a way to fix this. Don't believe what they tell you about me. His eyes cleared briefly. The blue box, he whispered. My office. Behind the... Rick stepped forward, cutting him off. That's enough. Get her out of here. The security guard was joined by another. Each took one of my arms, firmly, but not roughly. I didn't resist. Causing a scene would only reinforce their narrative. But as they escorted me toward the exit, Claire's voice rang out. Mom needs professional help. We've been trying to get her into treatment for months. This obsessive behavior, these delusions about conspiracies against her, it's been going on for years. Patients, visitors, and staff turned to stare. I felt their judgment, their pity, their suspicion washing over me in waves. My face burned with humiliation as I was marched through the lobby like a criminal. Outside in the parking lot, the security guards released me with warnings not to return. As I fumbled for my car keys, I heard someone call my name. It was Sandra, a nurse who had cared for James during his earlier hospital stay. Mrs. Wilson, she said hesitantly. I don't know what's happening, but this doesn't seem right. Mr. Wilson asked for you constantly when you weren't there last month. A sob escaped me before I could suppress it. They won't let me see him. They've taken everything. She glanced back at the hospital entrance nervously. I could lose my job for saying this, but something strange is going on with his care. The medication orders keep changing. He's on doses that seem excessive. And there are visitors, men in suits talking about properties and accounts, when he's too sedated to properly understand what they're saying. My blood ran cold. They're taking advantage of him while he's vulnerable. Sandra nodded slightly. I've worked with terminal patients for 15 years. This isn't normal end-of-life care. As she walked away, she whispered, check his patient portal. The password used to be your anniversary. They might not have changed it. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, tears streaming down my face, the full weight of my powerlessness crushing me. The image of James reaching for me, the brief recognition in his eyes, the way they had portrayed me as unstable and dangerous. It was almost too much to bear. That night, alone in the soulless apartment with its beige walls and rented furniture, I hit rock bottom. I found myself standing in the bathroom, staring at my reflection, a woman I barely recognized, hollowed out by grief and betrayal. For one dark moment, I considered ending it all, letting them win, surrendering to the narrative they had created. Instead, I remembered James's whispered words, the blue box, my office. He was trying to tell me something important, something that could change everything. With shaking fingers, I opened my laptop and tried to access James's patient portal. After 3 failed attempts, I tried our anniversary, 08141976, and the screen unlocked, revealing his medical records. Sandra had been right. They hadn't changed the password. What I found in those records confirmed my worst fears. The medication dosages were dangerously high. Consultation notes mentioned patient agitation and delusional fears about financial exploitation that needed to be managed. One note from the new doctor explicitly recommended limiting contact with spouse due to negative influence on mental state. They weren't just stealing our assets. They were systematically drugging James into compliance, using his legitimate illness as cover for financial exploitation. And they were using my forced absence to convince him I had abandoned him in his time of need. The final humiliation transformed into something else that night. A cold, clear rage that burned away my tears and straightened my spine. This was no longer just about saving my marriage or reclaiming my home. This was about saving James from the people who claimed to love him, but were slowly killing him with their greed. As dawn broke over Hartford, I made a promise to myself and to James. This would end. I would find that blue box. I would reclaim our truth. And Claire and Rick would discover that the fragile old woman they had underestimated was anything but broken. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains of my rented apartment as I sat at the small dining table, surrounded by papers. My night had been sleepless but productive. After discovering the patient portal, I had printed every document, every medication order, every visit note. Spread before me was the evidence of a methodical campaign to control James and erase me from his life. I ran my finger along a highlighted section of his medication list. Lorazepam at twice the recommended dose. Morphine increased weekly without documented pain assessments. Haloperidol, an antipsychotic, recently added for agitation with no psychiatric consultation. My nursing training, abandoned decades ago but never forgotten, screamed that this was wrong. These medications at these doses would keep James docile, confused, and suggestible, perfect for signing whatever documents they placed before him. A knock at my door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peered through the peephole to see Mr. Peterson, James's original lawyer, standing in the hallway with a leather briefcase. I opened the door cautiously. "Mrs. Wilson," he said, removing his glasses. "I apologize for coming unannounced. I've been trying to reach you by phone." "They changed my number," I explained, stepping aside to let him enter. "Part of their isolation strategy." He surveyed my cramped living space with a frown. "This is where they've put you?" "It serves their narrative," I replied, clearing papers from the sofa so he could sit. "The confused widow who needs supervised living." Mr. Peterson placed his briefcase on the coffee table and sat heavily. He looked tired, troubled. "I've just come from a meeting with Blackwell and Stern, the firm your son-in-law has retained. They're filing an emergency petition for guardianship over both James and you." My stomach dropped. "On what grounds?" "For James, they're citing his terminal illness and compromised decision-making. For you, they're alleging early-onset dementia, claiming your behavior has become erratic and that you're a danger to yourself." "That's absurd," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. After weeks of gaslighting and isolation, even I had moments of doubt about my own sanity. "I'm perfectly competent. I believe you," Mr. Peterson said, his voice gentle. "But they've collected affidavits from friends, neighbors, even your former doctor, all testifying to observed memory issues, confusion, emotional outbursts. Dr. Matthews? He would never..." "Not Dr. Matthews. They've listed a Dr. Rubin as your physician for the past 2 years." I shook my head in disbelief. "I've never met a Dr. Rubin in my life. They've created a paper trail, Elizabeth. Medical records showing appointments you never attended, prescriptions for memory medications you never took. Rick's firm specializes in elder law. He knows exactly how to build this kind of case." The room seemed to tilt beneath me. The depth of their deception was staggering. Not just financial manipulation, but a complete rewriting of reality. "The hearing is set for next Tuesday," Mr. Peterson continued. "If granted, Claire will have complete control over both your finances and your person, where you live, what medication you take, who you can contact." "They can't do this," I whispered. "It's fraud. It's criminal. It's unfortunately very difficult to prove," he replied. "These cases often come down to who has more convincing documentation, and they've been building their documentation for months, possibly years." I gestured to the papers spread across my table. "I have documentation too. James's medical records showing suspicious medication changes, evidence they've isolated him from his regular doctors." Mr. Peterson leaned forward with renewed interest. "How did you access these?" "His patient portal. They forgot to change the password." "This is helpful, but not enough," he said after examining the records. "We need something definitive, something that proves their intent." James's whispered words echoed in my mind. The blue box. My office. There's something in our home that James wanted me to find," I said. "A blue box in his office, but I can't get into the house. They've changed the locks." Mr. Peterson tapped his fingers thoughtfully against his briefcase. "Actually, you might be able to. Connecticut law is clear that without a formal eviction notice, you cannot be barred from your primary residence. The house is still jointly owned by you and James. They had no legal right to change the locks." A spark of hope ignited within me. "So I can demand entry?" "You can do more than that," he said. "You can call a locksmith and legally regain access. If they try to stop you, it would be interfering with your property rights. They'll claim I'm trespassing. Not if I accompany you as your legal representative," he replied. "In fact, I think we should go today, now, while Claire and Rick are likely at work." As Mr. Peterson made calls to arrange for a locksmith, I felt something shift within me. The fog of victimhood that had clouded my mind began to lift. The woman who had been sleepwalking through this nightmare, accepting the apartment, the garbage bags of clothes, the isolation, was waking up. I went to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. My hair had grown dull, my posture stooped, my eyes haunted. I straightened my spine, squared my shoulders, and spoke aloud to myself. "Enough," I said firmly. "Enough of being passive, enough of being manipulated, enough of doubting yourself." I showered quickly, applied makeup with a steady hand, and dressed in the most professional outfit I had available, a navy pantsuit James had given me for our 40th anniversary. The woman who emerged from the bedroom was not the broken widow Claire had created. She was Elizabeth Wilson, coming back into herself. "You look different," Mr. Peterson observed as we walked to his car. "I feel different," I replied. "I've been playing defense in a game I didn't even know I was in. That ends today." The drive to Fairfield took 40 minutes, during which Mr. Peterson explained the legal strategy he was developing. If we find evidence of fraud or undue influence, we can petition for an emergency injunction freezing all assets and reversing any recent transfers. The sight of my home, our home, sent a pang through my chest. The spring gardens I had planted were overgrown with weeds. The blue hydrangeas James had given me for our 35th anniversary were wilting, unwatered. The locksmith arrived promptly, verified my ID and property records Mr. Peterson had brought, and began work on the front door. Just as he finished, a neighbor emerged from the house across the street. "Elizabeth?" Diane called, hurrying over. "Oh my goodness, we've been so worried. Claire told everyone you had a breakdown and were in a facility upstate." The casual cruelty of that lie stole my breath momentarily. "As you can see, I'm perfectly fine," I managed. "Just locked out of my own home." Diane's expression wavered between concern and confusion. "But Rick showed us the court order. Said you weren't allowed on the property." "There is no court order," Mr. Peterson interjected smoothly. "Mrs. Wilson is still a legal owner of this residence." Diane looked uncertain. Do you need anything?" "Actually, yes," I said, an idea forming. "Could you and Bill be witnesses? I need to document the condition of the house and my belongings." Once inside, the scope of what had happened became clear. The home had been systematically dismantled. Furniture was missing. Artwork removed from walls. My clothing and personal items nowhere to be found. James's office door was locked with a new deadbolt. "Document everything," Mr. Peterson advised, using his phone to take photographs. "We'll need evidence of what's been removed." With the neighbors as witnesses, we methodically moved through the house, listing missing items. In the kitchen, I discovered all our financial files gone from the desk where we'd kept them for decades. In our bedroom, James's clothing remained, but my closet was empty, except for items I hadn't worn in years. The safe in the master closet, I suddenly remembered. James kept important documents there, but the safe had been emptied. Not even our passports remained. "They've been thorough," Mr. Peterson observed grimly. While he continued documenting the house with the neighbors, I examined James's office door. The new deadbolt required a key we didn't have. "Can the locksmith open this too?" I asked. "Within his rights, yes," Mr. Peterson confirmed. When the office was opened, I gasped. Unlike the rest of the house, which had been selectively pillaged, the office had been completely ransacked. Drawers pulled out, books swept from shelves, papers scattered across the floor. They had been searching for something, perhaps the same blue box James had mentioned. I moved methodically through the chaos, checking every shelf, every drawer, running my hands along the edges of the desk. Nothing. My heart sank. Then I remembered James's architectural precision. He had started to say before being interrupted. Behind what? I studied the office walls. Behind the bookcase? Behind the desk? My eyes traveled to the large framed architectural drawing of our home, James's original design that had hung on the wall for decades. "Behind the blueprint," I whispered. I carefully removed the heavy frame from the wall. Nothing visible. I turned it over and examined the backing. It looked undisturbed, but when I pressed my fingers along the edges, I felt a slight difference in tension near one corner. Using a letter opener from the desk, I carefully pried up the backing paper. There, nestled in a hollow carved into the wooden frame, was a small blue metal box. My hands trembled as I removed it. The box was locked, but a small key was taped to the bottom. Inside were a USB drive, a voice recorder similar to the one I had presented at the will reading, and a sealed envelope with my name written in James's familiar handwriting. "Mr. Peterson," I called. "I found it." As he entered the office, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered to hear Madison's panicked voice. "Grandma? Is that you? Mom's freaking out. The security system sent an alert that someone's in the house." "It's me, sweetheart," I confirmed. "I'm just retrieving some of my things. She and Dad are on their way home right now," Madison warned. "They're calling the police. Thank you for telling me." I said gently. Are you okay? And Tyler? A pause. We miss you, she said, her voice small. They won't let us call you. They said you're sick, but you don't sound sick. I'm not sick, darling. I'm perfectly fine, and I miss you both terribly. I have to go, she whispered. They're coming. Mr. Peterson had overheard. We should leave, he advised. Take what you've found. We can come back with a court order for the rest. I clutched the blue box to my chest and nodded. I have what I need. As we walked to the car, Diane approached again. Elizabeth, I don't understand what's happening, but something feels very wrong about all this. The stories Claire and Rick have been telling, they never quite sat right. They lied to you, I said simply. To everyone. But the truth is about to come out. We were barely out of the driveway when a police cruiser turned onto the street, followed closely by Claire's Mercedes SUV. In the rearview mirror, I saw Rick leap from the passenger seat, gesticulating wildly to the officers. Don't worry, Mr. Peterson assured me. They have no legal grounds to stop us. Back at his office, we opened the envelope first. Inside was a letter from James, dated just 3 weeks before the will reading, written in the steady hand of his healthier days. My dearest Beth, it began. If you're reading this, then you've found what they've been searching for, the truth they tried to bury along with me. I read the letter twice, tears streaming down my face. Then I plugged the USB drive into Mr. Peterson's computer. It contained financial records, emails, recorded conversations, a meticulously organized archive of Claire and Rick's systematic fraud spanning years. James knew, I whispered in disbelief. He knew what they were doing before he ever got sick. This changes everything, Mr. Peterson said, reviewing the evidence. With this, we don't just stop their guardianship petition. We can bring criminal charges. As the implications sank in, I felt something crystallize within me. The woman who had entered his office that morning, still fragile, still reeling from betrayal, was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, clearer, resolved. I want it all back, I said, my voice steady and certain. My home, my dignity, my husband's final days, and I want them to face consequences for what they've done. Mr. Peterson nodded, a new respect in his eyes. Then let's get to work. The contents of James's blue box were more explosive than I could have imagined. In the conference room of Mr. Peterson's law firm, we spread the evidence across the large table. As 2 paralegals cataloged each document, the story they told was damning. 5 years ago, Rick had begun secretly leveraging his position at his law firm to access our financial information. Using James's social security number and birth date, he had opened credit accounts, taken out loans against our properties, and systematically siphoned funds from James's retirement accounts into shell companies. He was careful, explained Marissa, the forensic accountant Mr. Peterson had brought in. Small amounts over time, a transfer here, a withdrawal there. Nothing that would trigger automatic fraud alerts. The USB drive contained spreadsheets documenting it all. James had been tracking the discrepancies for years, gathering evidence quietly while trying to understand the full scope of the betrayal. Why didn't he confront them sooner? I asked, staring at the meticulous records my husband had kept. Why let it continue? Mr. Peterson adjusted his glasses. According to his letter, he wanted concrete proof that would hold up in court. He was building a case. And protecting you, added Marissa. These notes indicate he was concerned about how Claire would react if confronted, specifically that she might try to turn the narrative against you. The most disturbing discovery was a series of emails between Rick and a Dr. Rubin, the same doctor they had falsely claimed was my physician. The exchanges discussed creating convincing documentation of cognitive decline for both James and me, dated months before James's cancer diagnosis. They were laying groundwork, Mr. Peterson observed grimly, creating a paper trail they could use if needed. But why? I asked, still struggling to comprehend the depth of their deception. We would have helped them if they needed money. We always did. Marissa pulled up another document, a financial statement for Claire and Rick, showing massive debt, failed investment properties, and luxury expenditures far beyond their means. They were underwater, maintaining appearances while drowning in debt. Your retirement accounts represented an easy solution. The voice recorder contained conversations between Claire and Rick that James had secretly captured in our home. Their casual discussion of how to manage Mother's mental health narrative and accelerate the transition of assets turned my stomach. My own daughter, plotting against me in my kitchen, while I gardened outside unaware. "What I don't understand," I said, "is how James managed to change his will without them knowing. They monitored everything." Mr. Peterson smiled slightly. "That was my doing. James contacted me from the hospital when he had moments of clarity. We arranged for a nurse, Sandra, to bring him the paperwork when Claire and Rick weren't present." "Sandra?" I repeated. "She's the one who told me about the patient portal." James trusted her. She witnessed the new will along with a hospital chaplain. Completely legal, though Claire and Rick tried to challenge it. By evening, we had organized the evidence into a comprehensive legal strategy. Mr. Peterson filed for emergency injunctions freezing all assets. He submitted petitions to dismiss Claire and Rick's guardianship claims and filed for a restraining order preventing them from accessing James's medical care. "What about criminal charges?" I asked as we reviewed the final paperwork. "That's your decision," he said carefully. "The evidence supports charges of fraud, elder abuse, and possibly criminal negligence regarding James's care. But prosecuting your daughter would be difficult." I thought of the little girl who once made me Mother's Day cards with pressed flowers, the teenager who danced with her father at her sweet 16, the mother who had once called me in tears because Madison had a fever. Somewhere inside the cold, calculating woman she had become, was there anything left of my Claire? "Let's focus on stopping them and securing James first," I decided. "Criminal charges can wait." That night, back in my sterile apartment, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Grandma, it's Madison. Using friend's phone. Something weird is happening. Mom and Dad are shredding papers and packing bags. They're fighting about contingency plans. Are you okay?" I called the number immediately. Madison answered in a whisper. "We're supposed to be asleep," she explained. "Tyler's here too." "Put me on speaker," I said. When both grandchildren could hear me, I spoke carefully. "Something difficult is happening between your parents and me. It's complicated adult business, but I want you both to know that I love you very much. I always have and I always will." "Are you really sick?" Tyler asked, his voice small. "Dad said you were having episodes." "No, sweetheart. I'm completely healthy. There have been some misunderstandings about Grandpa's care and his wishes. They won't let us see Grandpa either," Madison said. "They say it's too upsetting for him, but I think they're lying." The clarity of a 14-year-old cutting through adult deception. "Your grandfather loves you both very much," I assured them, "and he would want to see you." "Mom just came upstairs," Madison whispered urgently. "We have to go." "Wait," Tyler said quickly before hanging up. "The blue box. Did you find it? Grandpa told me to tell you about it if you ever came to the house, but I forgot until now." My breath caught. "Yes, Tyler. I found it. Thank you." The line went dead, but the revelation stunned me. James had enlisted our grandson as a backup messenger. Even heavily medicated, even closely monitored, he had found a way to ensure I would discover the truth. The next morning, Mr. Peterson called with news. The judge granted our emergency motions. Claire and Rick can't access any accounts or properties until the hearing, and we've been granted immediate access to James. "When can I see him?" "That's the concerning part," he said hesitantly. "When the hospital was served with the orders this morning, they reported that James had been transferred out yesterday afternoon, supposedly to a hospice facility, but the paperwork is incomplete." Cold fear gripped me. "They've moved him. They're hiding him." "Possibly. I filed emergency motions to compel disclosure of his location. The judge is reviewing them now." While waiting for news, I received another text from Madison. "Parents fighting all morning. Overheard Mom say something about moving Grandpa to the lake house where nobody would think to look." The lake house. Our vacation property in the Berkshires, a small cabin on Lake Garfield that James and I had purchased 30 years ago. The property Claire had complained about, but Rick had secretly coveted. I called Mr. Peterson immediately. "I know where James is. They've taken him to our lake house in Massachusetts. We need to go now." "Elizabeth, we should wait for the court order. He could be dying," I interrupted. "Alone, overdrugged, believing I abandoned him. I won't wait." After a pause, he sighed. "I'll pick you up in 20 minutes, but we'll need local law enforcement to accompany us." The 2-hour drive to the Berkshires was the longest of my life. Every minute felt like James slipping further away. Mr. Peterson made calls throughout the journey, arranging for Massachusetts police to meet us and for an ambulance to stand by. As we wound up the mountain roads, memories flooded back. Summer weekends with a young Claire splashing in the lake, James grilling on the deck, autumn weekends watching leaves turn fiery colors. our refuge from the world, now corrupted by deception. 2 police cruisers waited at the turnoff to the private road leading to our cabin. Mr. Peterson showed them the Connecticut court orders, explaining the situation. They agreed to accompany us to the property, but cautioned that their jurisdiction was limited. "Just get me to my husband," I told them. "That's all I need." As we approached the final bend before the cabin would come into view, I saw Claire's Mercedes parked hastily among the trees, partially hidden. My heart pounded. They were here. The cabin looked peaceful from the outside. The same weathered gray shingles, the same wide porch with its pair of rocking chairs. But the stillness felt wrong, ominous. The police officers approached first, knocking firmly on the door. "Police, open up." After a long moment, Rick appeared, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled. "What is this about?" he demanded, then froze when he saw me emerging from Mr. Peterson's car. "We have court orders regarding James Wilson," the officer explained, presenting the documents. "We need to confirm his whereabouts and condition immediately." Rick's lawyer mask slipped into place. "This is a Massachusetts property. Connecticut orders don't apply here." "Actually," Mr. Peterson interjected, "the orders concern the person of James Wilson, not the property. And as they involve potential medical endangerment, they are enforceable across state lines." While they argued legal technicalities, I noticed movement at the side of the house, Claire slipping out the kitchen door, hurrying toward the path that led to the dock. I broke away from the group, following her. "Claire," I called. "Stop this, please." She whirled to face me, her expression a mixture of rage and fear. "You've ruined everything," she hissed. "We had it all worked out. Dad would have been comfortable. You would have been cared for. Why couldn't you just accept the arrangement?" "Because it was built on lies," I replied, moving closer. "Where is your father, Claire? Where is James?" Something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty. Perhaps a flash of the daughter I once knew. "He's inside, resting." "Is he even still alive?" I asked, my voice breaking. Her face contorted. "How can you ask that? He's my father. And my husband. My partner for nearly 50 years. The man you've kept me from as he's dying." A police officer approached behind me. "Ma'am, we need to check on Mr. Wilson now." Claire's shoulders slumped. The fight seemed to drain from her. "He's in the back bedroom. The hospice nurse left an hour ago." I rushed past her into the cabin, through the small living room with its stone fireplace, down the narrow hallway to the bedroom James and I had shared for so many summer nights. The door was ajar. The man in the bed barely resembled my husband. Gaunt, pale, his breathing shallow. An IV stand stood beside him, medication flowing into his arm. I approached slowly, afraid of what I might find. "James," I whispered, taking his thin hand in mine. "It's Beth. I'm here." His eyelids fluttered. Slowly, painfully, his eyes opened. For a terrifying moment, there was no recognition in them. Then, gradually, awareness dawned. "Beth?" His voice was a rasp. "You came. Always," I promised, tears streaming down my face. "I never left you. They kept us apart, but I never stopped trying to reach you." "I knew," he murmured, his fingers weakly squeezing mine. "Deep down, I knew." The paramedics entered with a stretcher, but I wouldn't release James's hand. "I'm riding with him," I insisted. "I'm not leaving his side again." As they prepared to transfer him, James tugged my hand weakly. "Did you find it?" he asked. "The box?" "Yes," I assured him. "I found everything. You were so clever, so thorough." A ghost of his old smile touched his lips. "Architect," he whispered. "Details matter." In the background, I could hear Rick shouting about lawyers and rights and jurisdiction. Claire stood in the doorway, watching silently as the paramedics carefully moved James to the stretcher. Our eyes met over his frail body. "Why?" I asked her simply. "We would have given you anything you needed. You only had to ask." She looked away, unable to hold my gaze. "It was never enough," she said so quietly I barely heard. "What you had, what you gave, it was never enough." In that moment, I saw Claire clearly, not as my betrayer, not as my daughter, but as a woman so consumed by wanting more that she had lost sight of the abundance she already possessed. The tragedy wasn't just what she had done to us, but what she had done to herself. As they wheeled James out to the waiting ambulance, Mr. Peterson touched my arm. "The state police want statements from everyone. There will likely be arrests." I looked back at Claire and Rick, standing in the cabin doorway like strangers. Do what needs to be done legally, I said. But right now, I'm going with my husband. In the ambulance, James drifted in and out of consciousness. The paramedic adjusted his oxygen and checked the IV, frowning at the medication bag. This dosage seems extremely high for palliative care, he noted, taking samples for testing. James's eyes found mine again. You were right, he murmured. All along. About them. Don't think about that now, I soothed, stroking his forehead. Just rest. I'm not going anywhere. His thin fingers tightened around mine with surprising strength. Always. Stronger than me, he whispered. My Elizabeth. The quiet force. They never saw it. As the ambulance wound its way down the mountain toward the hospital, I held James's hand and thought about the irony. Claire and Rick had seen me as the vulnerable one, the easy target, never recognizing that a lifetime of devotion had given me the greatest power of all, the absolute certainty of knowing who I was and what I was fighting for. The hospital in Pittsfield admitted James immediately. The emergency doctor was alarmed by his condition and the suspicious medication regimen. These dosages are consistent with palliative sedation for end-stage patients, she explained. But according to his most recent scans from Hartford, his cancer hasn't progressed to that point yet. They were keeping him sedated to control him, I said, the reality still shocking despite what I'd already discovered. We're adjusting his medications now, she assured me. It will take time for them to clear his system, but he should become more alert as they do. I refused to leave James's bedside, sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair, holding his hand through the night. By morning, his color had improved slightly. His breathing was stronger. When he opened his eyes, they were clearer than I'd seen in months. There you are, he said hoarsely, reaching to touch my cheek. Not a dream this time. Not a dream, I confirmed, kissing his palm. I'm really here. Mr. Peterson arrived mid-morning with updates. Rick had been arrested for violating the Connecticut court orders and for interference with a protected person. Claire had been questioned, but released pending further investigation. The district attorneys from both states are coordinating, he explained. The financial crimes were committed in Connecticut, but the medical neglect and potential endangerment occurred in Massachusetts. What happens now? I asked. We have a hearing in 3 days regarding the estate and guardianship matters. Given the evidence and James's improving condition, I expect all their petitions to be dismissed. The criminal investigations will take longer. James was dozing but stirred at our conversation. No hospitals, he murmured. Want to go home? I squeezed his hand. Soon, my love. We just need to get you stabilized. After Mr. Peterson left, Dr. Sharma, the oncologist who had reviewed James's case, came to discuss his condition. Your husband's cancer is advanced, she said gently, but not as terminal as his previous care team suggested. With appropriate treatment, he could have months, possibly a year of quality life. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. They made it seem like the end was imminent. That's how they justified the heavy sedation. Unfortunately, I've seen cases where family members accelerate the process, she said carefully. It's more common than people realize. They were rushing his death, I whispered, the horror of it washing over me anew. Their own father. Dr. Sharma's eyes were compassionate but direct. What's important now is focusing on his actual condition and making decisions based on medical facts, not narratives created by others. Over the next 2 days, as the medications cleared James's system, his personality began to reemerge. His wit, his gentleness, his architect's precision with words, all returning in glimpses between periods of fatigue. We had real conversations for the first time in months. I suspected for years, he confessed during a lucid period. Small discrepancies in accounts, questions about withdrawals I hadn't made. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, hurt that he had carried this burden alone. I couldn't believe it at first. My own daughter. His voice cracked. I thought if I confronted her privately, gave her a chance to explain, to make it right. But she denied it. He nodded wearily, turned it around, suggested I was confused about my own finances. When Rick joined the conversation, they were so convincing that I almost doubted myself. So you started gathering evidence. Couldn't use my computer. They monitored it. Couldn't use the phone. They checked the records. Had to be careful, creative. A small, sad smile. Never thought my architectural training would be used to hide evidence in plain sight. As James rested, I began making phone calls. To our friends, neighbors, church members. rebuilding the support network Claire and Rick had systematically dismantled. The responses were overwhelming. "Elizabeth, we've been trying to reach you for months. They told us you'd had a breakdown and needed space. We sent cards to a facility in Vermont. They gave us that address. One by one, I reclaimed these connections, briefly explaining the situation without dwelling on details. There's been a misunderstanding about James's care. I'm with him now. We would love your support and prayers." Meanwhile, Mr. Peterson was building our legal counteroffensive. The evidence from the Blue Box had expanded into investigations of multiple financial crimes. The forensic accountant had traced money movements revealing that Claire and Rick had been systematically emptying accounts for years. "They've been living beyond their means for a decade," Marissa explained during a conference call while James napped. "Designer clothes, private schools, lavish vacations, all while maxing out credit cards and taking equity loans on properties that were underwater. And they saw James's illness as an opportunity," Mr. Peterson added, "a way to solve their financial problems permanently." The most disturbing discovery came from James's medical records. His original oncologist, replaced early in his treatment by Claire and Rick's chosen doctors, had noted that James's cancer type typically responded well to aggressive treatment. The decision to move directly to comfort care had been made against medical recommendations. Armed with this information, Mr. Peterson filed additional motions for immediate restoration of all assets, for damages related to fraud, for medical malpractice against the physicians who had participated in the scheme. The legal net was tightening. On the third day, James was strong enough to give a recorded statement, detailing the gradual campaign of isolation and manipulation. His voice, though weak, carried the weight of absolute certainty. "They convinced me, for a time, that Elizabeth was unstable," he admitted, pain evident in his expression. "I believed them because they were my family. What father doesn't trust his daughter?" After the deposition, Dr. Sharma approved his release from the hospital. "He's still very ill," she cautioned me privately. "The cancer hasn't disappeared, but his immediate crisis was largely iatrogenic, caused by the medication regimen. Can I take him home? To Connecticut?" She nodded. "With proper home care, yes. I've arranged for a transfer of his case to an oncology team in New Haven, I trust. And I've documented my findings thoroughly for the legal proceedings." The evening before our scheduled departure, we received unexpected visitors. Madison and Tyler stood hesitantly in the hospital room doorway, accompanied by an older woman I recognized as Rick's mother, Patricia. "The children wanted to see their grandfather," Patricia explained stiffly. "Given the circumstances, I thought it best if I brought them rather than their parents." James's face lit up at the sight of the grandchildren. "Come here, you two," he called, opening his arms. They rushed to his bedside, hugging him carefully amid the medical equipment. Madison was trying not to cry. Tyler made no such effort, tears streaming openly down his face. "We thought you were going to die without saying goodbye," he sobbed. "Mom said you were too sick to see us." "I'm sick," James acknowledged, "but never too sick for you." As the children perched on either side of the hospital bed, sharing stories from school and asking gentle questions about his health, I stepped into the hallway with Patricia. "I don't understand everything that's happened," she said, her arms crossed defensively. "But those children have been distraught. Rick won't discuss it, just says it's a legal misunderstanding that will be resolved." "It's more than a misunderstanding," I said quietly. "The evidence is substantial." She sighed heavily. "I've had concerns about their lifestyle for years. The constant need for more, better, bigger. The complaints about how you and James weren't generous enough, despite all you did for them." She met my eyes directly. "Did they really try to hasten things?" I nodded, unable to soften this truth. "The medical evidence suggests so." Patricia closed her eyes briefly. "I'll keep bringing the children to visit if you'll allow it. They shouldn't suffer for their parents' actions." "Of course," I agreed immediately. "They're innocent in all this." Inside the room, James was showing the grandchildren how to play chess on a small travel set Dr. Sharma had brought him. His hands trembled slightly as he placed the pieces, but his eyes were bright with purpose. "Strategy," he was explaining to Tyler. "Sometimes the most powerful piece on the board looks the least impressive, like the pawn, seems limited, moving just one space at a time. But with patience and positioning, a pawn can become a queen." Madison looked up as I entered. Grandpa's teaching us chess. He says it's about thinking ahead, not just the move you're making now." Your grandfather has always been an excellent strategist, I replied, meeting James's eyes with a small smile. After the visitors left, James seemed energized despite his physical weakness. We need to talk about what happens next, he said, his architect's mind sketching plans. They won't stop just because they've been caught. Claire inherited my stubbornness, if not my ethics. Together, we outlined what we wanted from the legal proceedings. Not vindictiveness, not punishment for its own sake, but accountability and protection. For ourselves, for the grandchildren, and ironically, even for Claire and Rick. They need consequences, James said. Real ones. Not to destroy them, but because facing what they've done is their only hope for redemption. The next morning, as we prepared for discharge, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. Mrs. Wilson? This is Detective Morales from the Connecticut Financial Crimes Unit. I'm calling to inform you that we've executed search warrants at your daughter's residence and your son-in-law's office based on the evidence your attorney provided. Have they been arrested? I asked, watching James being helped into a wheelchair by a nurse. Not yet, but it's likely imminent. We've uncovered additional evidence of widespread fraud involving other clients at Mr. Parker's firm. This case has expanded significantly. After ending the call, I relayed the information to James. His expression was solemn but resolved. So it begins, he said quietly. The reckoning. As the hospital aide wheeled him toward the elevator, James reached for my hand. No matter what happens in court, Beth, we've already won the important battle. What's that? I asked. We're together. They couldn't separate us permanently. They couldn't make me forget what we built over 50 years. He squeezed my fingers with surprising strength. Some bonds can't be broken by lies or distance or even morphine. In the hospital parking lot, Mr. Peterson waited beside his car. The autumn sun cast long shadows across the pavement. The mountains in the distance were ablaze with October colors, the same view that had comforted us at the lake house for decades. Ready to go home? He asked. James looked up at me, then at the horizon, then back to Mr. Peterson. More than ready, he said firmly. We have a chess game to finish. The hearing was scheduled for 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. October in Connecticut painted the courthouse in amber and gold, leaves skittering across the granite steps as Mr. Peterson helped James from the car. 2 weeks of proper care had improved his condition remarkably. He still used a wheelchair for longer distances, but today he insisted on walking into the courthouse with his head high, leaning on a polished walnut cane and my steady arm. Appearances matter, he had explained while knotting his tie that morning. I won't be wheeled in like an invalid they can dismiss. The courthouse corridor buzzed with whispered conversations that fell silent as we passed. What had begun as a private family matter had become public knowledge after the arrests. The local newspaper had run a front-page story. Prominent attorney and wife charged in elder exploitation scheme. Even national outlets had picked up the more sensational elements. The daughter who allegedly drugged her father to access his fortune. The financial crimes extending to other vulnerable clients. We paused outside the courtroom doors. James took a deep breath, straightening his shoulders. Nervous? I asked quietly. Not about the legal outcome, he replied. About seeing Claire. About looking into my daughter's eyes and finding a stranger there. Inside, the courtroom was already crowded. Mr. Peterson guided us to the plaintiff's table, where Marissa and 2 associate attorneys waited with precisely organized evidence binders. Across the aisle, an expensive team of defense lawyers huddled in conversation, but Claire and Rick were notably absent. Where are they? I whispered to Mr. Peterson. Defense requested they be allowed to enter after proceedings begin, he explained, claiming concerns about media attention and prejudicial atmosphere. Judge Eleanor Winters entered promptly at 9, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. Good morning, she began, surveying the crowded room. Before we proceed, I want to be clear that while this case has attracted significant public interest, I expect decorum from everyone present. As she reviewed the case summary, the side door opened. Claire entered first, dressed conservatively in a navy suit, her face carefully composed. Rick followed, thinner than I remembered, tension visible in his jaw. Neither looked in our direction as they took their seats at the defense table. We have multiple matters before the court today, Judge Winters continued. First, the petition for guardianship over James and Elizabeth Wilson, filed by Claire and Richard Parker. Second, the counter-petition to invalidate financial transactions conducted over the past 5 years. And third, the request for damages related to alleged fraud and medical neglect. She peered over her reading glasses. Given the parallel criminal proceedings, I want to clarify that this court's focus is on the civil matters only. However, my rulings may certainly impact those criminal cases. Mr. Peterson rose. Your Honor, before we begin formal arguments, my clients would like to address the court directly. Mr. Wilson's health is fragile, and speaking later in the proceedings may not be possible for him. After the defense's objection was overruled, James slowly made his way to the witness stand. Even from a distance, I could see the effort it took. The pain he carefully masked with dignity. Mr. Wilson, Judge Winters said gently, you may make your statement. James adjusted the microphone, his architect's hands still elegant despite their tremor. Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be brief, as my energy is limited these days. He turned slightly, finally looking directly at Claire and Rick. I want to address my daughter and son-in-law first. Claire, I don't recognize the person you've become. The daughter we raised understood the value of integrity, of family, of truth. Somewhere along the way, you lost those lessons. Claire's composed expression flickered. She stared down at her hands. What hurts most deeply, James continued, his voice gaining strength, isn't the money you took or the lies you told. It's that you were willing to separate me from your mother in my final days. That you used my illness as a weapon, my medication as a tool of control. He paused, taking a steadying breath. I understand financial desperation. I understand fear. What I cannot understand is the deliberate cruelty of keeping Elizabeth from my bedside, of making me believe she had abandoned me when she was fighting every day to reach me. Rick whispered something to Claire, who shook her head sharply in response. To this court, James continued, turning back to the judge, I want to state unequivocally that I am of sound mind when not over-medicated. The evidence my attorney will present shows a systematic campaign to portray both my wife and me as incompetent in order to gain control of our assets. His voice softened. Finally, to my grandchildren, who may someday read the transcript of these proceedings, none of this diminishes my love for you. Adults make terrible mistakes sometimes, but that doesn't erase the good in them or in our shared past. As James finished, the courtroom remained silent. Judge Winters thanked him with evident respect, and Mr. Peterson helped him return to our table. When he reached me, I took his hand beneath the table and felt it trembling not from weakness, but from emotion. What followed was 5 hours of methodical legal dismantling. Mr. Peterson presented financial records, medical testimony, and the contents of the blue box in devastating sequence. Dr. Sharma testified via video about James's medical condition and the inappropriate medication protocol. The forensic accountant walked through the money trail with clinical precision. Throughout the presentation, I watched Claire. Her carefully maintained facade began to crack as the evidence mounted. Her eyes darted to the exit, to her attorneys, to Rick, who sat increasingly rigid, his expression hardening into something cold and calculating. During the afternoon recess, Mr. Peterson updated us on developments in the related cases. The State Bar has suspended Rick's license pending investigation. 3 other families have come forward with similar complaints of financial exploitation, and the medical board is reviewing the licenses of the doctors who participated. When court resumed, the defense presented their case, a fragile construction of alternative explanations and character witnesses who seemed uncomfortable under cross-examination. Their financial expert attempted to frame the transfers as poorly documented loans, rather than theft. Their medical witness suggested the medication regimen was within acceptable parameters for palliative care. As the defense neared completion, Claire unexpectedly stood. I need to speak, she announced, interrupting her own attorney's closing remarks. A flurry of whispered consultation followed. Rick's face flushed with anger as he grabbed Claire's arm, which she firmly removed. After conferring with the judge, Claire's attorney reluctantly agreed to let her take the stand. Under oath, her practiced composure crumbled completely. I want to withdraw our petition, she stated, her voice unsteady. Ms. Parker, Judge Winters said carefully, are you aware that withdrawing your petition at this stage does not resolve the counterclaims against you? Yes, Your Honor. Claire swallowed visibly. I also want to acknowledge that portions of our petition contained inaccuracies. Her attorney jumped up. Your Honor, we request a brief recess to confer with our client. Denied, the judge replied firmly. Ms. Parker has taken the stand voluntarily. She may continue. Claire looked directly at me for the first time. The portrayal of my mother as cognitively impaired was false. She has always been competent and capable. Her voice broke slightly. The characterization of my father's wishes regarding his care was also misrepresented. Rick stood abruptly. "This is against advice of counsel," he announced loudly. "My wife is under extreme emotional distress and not thinking clearly." "Sit down, Mr. Parker," Judge Winters ordered sharply, "or I'll have you removed." As Rick sank back into his seat, Claire continued, her words coming faster now, like a dam breaking. "It started small, just borrowing against assets we knew we'd inherit eventually, then covering those loans with others. Rick said it was just accelerating the timeline, that Dad would understand it as providing for our future." "Claire, stop!" Rick hissed, loud enough for the court reporter to catch. She ignored him. "When Dad got sick, it became about damage control. The evidence he'd been collecting. We knew it existed but couldn't find it. The blue box." She glanced at James. "We tore apart the house looking for it." The courtroom was absolutely silent as Claire detailed the progression from financial desperation to active conspiracy, the isolation of her parents, the fabricated medical reports, the gradual escalation that culminated in keeping James heavily sedated while transferring assets. "And your mother's exclusion from your father's care?" Judge Winters prompted when Claire faltered. "That was..." Claire's composure finally broke completely. Tears streamed down her face. "That was unforgivable. I knew it was wrong even as we were doing it. I told myself it was necessary, that she would interfere with the financial arrangements, that seeing Dad decline would be too painful for her." She looked directly at me again, but really I couldn't bear to face her knowing what we were doing. Every time she looked at me with trust, with love, it was unbearable. So we made her the enemy. We created a story where keeping her away was for Dad's good, not for our convenience. Rick stood again, this time addressing his attorneys. "I want it on record that I disavow these statements. My wife is not speaking for me." Judge Winters silenced him with a glare before turning back to Claire. "Are you aware that these admissions may impact your criminal case?" Claire nodded, wiping her tears. "Yes, Your Honor." "And you're making them without agreement from the prosecution for leniency?" "Yes, I can't keep lying. Not here. Not with them sitting there." She gestured toward James and me. "Not with what we took from them." The judge studied her thoughtfully. "Very well. Your testimony is noted. What followed was procedural. The judge's rulings on each petition, the orders for financial restoration, the referrals to criminal court. But the real judgment had already occurred in that moment of truth from Claire, unexpected and raw. As the proceedings concluded, the media rushed to the courthouse steps, cameras and microphones ready. Mr. Peterson guided us toward a side exit where a car waited. As we moved slowly through the corridor, I heard footsteps hurrying behind us. "Mom? Dad? Wait, please." We turned to see Claire standing alone, her makeup streaked from tears, Rick and the attorneys notably absent. "I know I have no right to ask anything from you," she said, maintaining a respectful distance. I needed to say it directly, not just to the court. I'm sorry, so deeply sorry." James leaned heavily on his cane. "Why, Claire? We gave you everything we could. It was never about what you didn't give me," she said quietly. "It was about what I couldn't give myself. Contentment, gratitude, the ability to live within my means instead of constantly reaching for more." She looked at me, her eyes so like mine, now filled with a shame I had never seen there before. "Rick is filing for divorce. He claims I betrayed him by speaking today. Maybe I did, but I couldn't leave that courtroom knowing I'd had one last chance to tell the truth and didn't take it." I felt James's hand tighten on my arm, steadying himself physically and emotionally. "What happens now is up to the courts," he said, wearily. "Both legal and personal consequences will follow their course." "I know," Claire acknowledged. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking for another chance. I just needed you to hear directly from me that I know what I did, that I'm not hiding behind lawyers or excuses anymore." As she turned to leave, James called after her. "Claire." She paused, looking back. "The grandchildren. They're innocent in this. We won't let them suffer for your actions." A fresh tear slid down her cheek. "Thank you," she whispered. And then she was gone, walking alone down the long courthouse corridor. In the car, James sat silently for several minutes, staring out at the autumn landscape. Finally, he took my hand, his wedding ring clicking softly against mine. "Did you expect that?" he asked. "Her confession?" "No," I admitted. "I thought she was too far gone." He nodded slowly. "Perhaps there's still something of the daughter we raised in there, buried deep, but not completely lost." As we drove home, our real home, reclaimed and slowly being restored, I thought about Claire's words, about how the seeds of destruction had been planted in what she couldn't give herself, not what we had failed to provide, about how the pursuit of more had cost her everything. The media would tell this story as a cautionary tale of greed and exploitation. The courts would frame it in terms of laws broken and restitution owed. But sitting beside the man I had nearly lost, I understood it differently, as the tragedy of a woman who had everything she truly needed and couldn't recognize its value until it was too late. 6 months have passed since the courthouse confrontation. Winter has released its grip on Connecticut, giving way to a tentative spring. The first crocuses push through the soil in my garden, persistent, resilient life emerging from dormancy. James sits in his favorite chair by the bay window, sunlight illuminating his face as he sketches on a small pad. His hands still tremble, but he's found ways to adapt, using shorter strokes, embracing the slight imperfection that comes with his condition. The oncologists were right about the timeline. We measure our future in months now, not years. But each day has a quality of presence we might never have achieved without the crisis that nearly destroyed us. "What are you working on?" I ask, bringing him tea in the blue pottery mug he's always favored. "Plans," he answers with a small smile, turning the sketch pad toward me. It's a design for a garden bench, elegant in its simplicity, with subtle details that make it uniquely James's creation. "For the memory garden?" I ask, setting the tea within his reach. He nods. "I want to finish it before summer. Something lasting." The memory garden was James's idea, a small, peaceful space behind our home where trauma could be transformed into beauty. Each plant, each stone, each element holds significance in our shared story, not as a monument to pain, but as testimony to renewal. Our life has settled into new patterns. 3 days a week, a home health nurse visits. Our friends have established a rotation of support, bringing meals, providing companionship, driving James to appointments when I need rest. The community we thought lost to us has returned tenfold once the truth emerged. The legal aftermath continues to unfold. Rick is facing multiple felony charges, not just for our case, but for a pattern of elder exploitation unveiled during the investigation. He maintains his innocence, blaming Claire for all decisions while portraying himself as an unwitting participant. Few seem convinced by this narrative. Claire's path has been different. Her guilty plea to lesser charges resulted in probation, mandatory therapy, and significant community service. The judge considered her courtroom confession and subsequent cooperation with authorities as mitigating factors. She lives modestly now in a small apartment in New Haven, working as an administrative assistant at a nonprofit serving elderly residents. Our relationship with her exists in a delicate middle ground, neither estranged nor restored. She visits every other Sunday, the interactions still awkward, layered with unspoken grief and tentative hope. James is more receptive to these visits than I am. "Holding anger requires energy I no longer have to spare," he explained when I questioned his willingness to see her. "The grandchildren come more frequently. Madison and Tyler spend every other Saturday with us, baking cookies in my kitchen, playing chess with James, helping with the memory garden when weather permits. Their resilience amazes me, how they navigate the fractured landscape of their family with grace beyond their years. Last weekend, Madison confided her college aspirations while helping me plant lily bulbs. "I want to study ethics and law," she said, her hands steadily working the soil. "I want to understand how good people can make such terrible choices, and how to build systems that prevent it. Even in destruction, seeds of wisdom are planted." The financial restitution was substantial. Claire and Rick were ordered to repay everything they had taken, plus damages. The sale of their Greenwich house, liquidation of investments, and surrender of luxury purchases covered most of the amount. What couldn't be recovered through assets will be paid through garnished wages for years to come. But money was never the heart of this story. What was stolen from us, trust, time, dignity, cannot be quantified in dollar amounts. The weeks James spent heavily sedated, believing I had abandoned him. The nights I spent alone, locked out of my home, my identity questioned. The precious months of James's remaining life that could have been peaceful instead of traumatic. No court can restore these losses. Yet in their place, unexpected gifts have emerged. A new understanding of our strength, individually and as a couple. A deeper appreciation for the true friends who stood by us when our own daughter turned away. A community of support we never fully recognized until crisis revealed its contours. And most precious of all, the time we now have together, limited but intensely valued. I've been thinking, James says, setting aside his sketches, about legacies. I sit beside him, taking his hand in mine. His skin is paper thin now, blue veins visible beneath the surface, yet still warm with life. What kind of legacies? Not buildings or bank accounts, he says thoughtfully, though I've had both. The only legacy that matters is how we influence the lives we touched. For better or worse, I murmur, thinking of Claire. Even there, he insists. Even in the damage, there's potential for growth. Her choices showed Madison and Tyler something important about consequences, about integrity. This is classic James, finding purpose in pain, lessons in loss, the architect's perspective that sees structure within chaos. My phone chimes with a text message. It's from Claire. The nursing home project is having an open house next week. My community service hours went into helping renovate their garden. Would you and Dad consider coming to the opening? No pressure. I show James the message. His eyes, still bright with intelligence despite his failing body, study it thoughtfully. We should go, he says finally. Not for Claire, for ourselves, to see something positive created from all this. That evening, as twilight softens the edges of our bedroom, James and I sit together reviewing old photo albums. Pictures of Claire as a toddler, gap-toothed and beaming. James building her first bicycle. Me teaching her to bake bread in our kitchen. Where did we lose her? I wonder aloud, tracing the image of a smiling teenager with my fingertip. James shakes his head slowly. I don't think we did. Not completely. That courtroom moment proved it. Somewhere inside, beneath layers of greed and self-deception, our daughter still exists. Can she find her way back? That's her journey now, he says gently. Not our responsibility anymore. Later, as I help him prepare for bed, the nightly routine of medications, comfort measures, small dignities maintained, James pulls me close for a moment. I want you to promise me something, he says, his voice serious. When I'm gone, don't let this story harden you. James, listen, he insists. You'll have choices about how to carry this experience. It could become bitterness, suspicion, isolation, or it could be wisdom, discernment, compassion. How can you speak of compassion after what they did? His smile is gentle, his eyes knowing. Because I've watched you these past months. Your strength didn't come from anger. Though you had every right to it, it came from love. Fierce, protective love. He touches my cheek, his fingers trembling slightly. That's your superpower, Elizabeth. It always has been. Don't lose it when I'm not here to remind you. In the darkness of our bedroom, his breathing eventually settles into the rhythm of sleep. I lie awake, thinking about promises and legacies, and how life circles back on itself in unexpected ways. 6 decades ago, I was a young nursing student who set aside one dream to embrace another when my mother fell ill. Now, in my late 60s, I've applied to volunteer at the hospital cancer ward, using those long-dormant skills to comfort others facing the journey James and I are on. Something dormant awakened during our crisis, a capacity for advocacy, for fighting injustice, for standing firm when systems fail the vulnerable. Perhaps that's the truth at the core of this painful chapter. None of us is just one thing, victim or victor, betrayed or beloved, wounded or healed. We are complex tapestries of all our experiences, constantly being rewoven as new threads appear. Claire's betrayal nearly destroyed us, but in surviving it, in fighting back with dignity rather than vengeance, in reclaiming our truth when others tried to rewrite it, James and I discovered depths in ourselves and in our bond that might otherwise have remained hidden. Tomorrow, I'll plant more bulbs in the memory garden. James will continue his bench design. We'll welcome Madison and Tyler for their Saturday visit. Claire's text will wait another day for my response. Life will proceed, altered but intact, wounded but not defeated. And in this continuing story, I find a truth worth sharing. The power to define our lives never truly belongs to those who would harm us. It remains always within ourselves, in the quiet certainty of knowing who we are, in the daily choices to meet cruelty with dignity, in the radical act of continuing to love in a world where betrayal is possible. That knowledge doesn't erase the pain or undo the damage, but it offers something perhaps more valuable: the freedom to write our own ending to a story others tried to control. Not a perfect happily ever after, but something authentic and earned, something that honors both our scars and our healing. As dawn approaches, I curl closer to James, synchronizing my breathing with his. Whatever time we have left, weeks, months, if we're fortunate, perhaps a year, belongs to us now. Reclaimed, protected, precious beyond measure. This is our victory, not in courts or bank accounts or public vindication, though we have received all three, but in this moment, and the next, and all the moments we create together until the end.